Hey everyone, how's it going? This is the Bald Metal Noid coming at you with another wonderful vid. Right now we're gonna take a look back 50 years exactly, because when I upload this is February 13th of 2020. Now I'm recording it before then, but that's neither here nor there. It's get uploaded on February 13th, and you may just watch it sometime after that, which is fine. But if you are watching this the day it's uploaded, 50 years ago exactly, something extremely monumental happened to heavy metal. Probably the single most important event that could have happened to heavy metal happened exactly 50 years ago. And what is that exactly? Well, this album was released exactly 50 years ago. Black Sabbath's self-titled debut. And we're going to talk a little bit about this album from a few different perspectives and just see what we can glean about it. But yeah, this was... Now, Black Sabbath existed before this, but this was when this album was released and the entire world could hear heavy metal for the first time. So, I have a book here, and it has Ozzy on the cover, which I think is incredibly appropriate. Now, this looks like, from his solo days, not his Black Sabbath days, but whatever. I mean, the original, the vocalist for Black Sabbath, well, at least who we think of. I can't think of a better guy to be on the cover of this. So, let's see. I'm going to read... There's a really long entry on Black Sabbath. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm going to try to find... here we go. Here we go. On the font, which completely failed to make... they were talking about an early recording they make, and then switching to Vertigo, their first album, produced by Roger Bain and done in 2 days. They recorded it in only 2 days for £600, was another matter. Black Sabbath 1970 stayed in the UK album charts for 5 months and peaked at number 8. The album was a classic right from the driving rain and tolling bell of the doomy opening title track. It was packed with gargantuan riffing. Yep. I would say that is an extremely accurate description of it. Then the next paragraph talks about the release of Paranoid 7 months later. I mean, it's amazing that those albums were only separated by 7 months as far as when they were released. That's insane. 2 monumental metal albums by only 7 months. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. We're more here to focus on this first album and just how important it is. I mean, there were other bands that were involved in, quote, the birth of heavy. Led Zeppelin, of course, immediately springs to mind. Blue Oyster Cult, Deep Purple. There were other bands. They had a lot to do with the birth of heavy, but this is the first heavy metal album ever. I think that is a fact. It's not subjective. It's objective reality. So, the edition I have is a pretty basic edition on CD. I'll read you the little blurb about it. It's not very long, at least what came, because essentially you open it up and this is all you get. So, here we go. I'll read this fairly quick. Formed in Birmingham, England in 1968, the four-man powerhouse known as Black Sabbath pioneered a bone-crunching rock and roll assault that laid the foundations for the heavy metal revolution that swept popular music in the 70s and 80s. While the band's blistering ensemble playing an evocative lyric blend of machismo and mysticism set a standard for countless groups to follow, their 1970 self-titled debut album remains one of the most innovative and influential long players in rock history. I can't, I'm already misspeaking. Comprised of the guys in the band, the quartet was initially known by the name Earth and took their... Okay, what do we have about the album? Okay, changed their name to Black Sabbath. The new monkier reflected the band's penchant for moody, dark-hued music that matched supernatural themes with supercharged ensemble playing. In 1969, they entered the recording studio to cut their first album. The result is the landmark Black Sabbath. Produced by Roger Bain, Black Sabbath highlights 5 original compositions from the band. In addition to such classic cuts as The Wizard, Wicked World, and their signature song Black Sabbath, the album contains 2 other outstanding tracks, blending road-tested material into eerie extended song suites. The medley, A Bit of Finger, Sleeping Village, and Warning clocks in at over 14 minutes, while a 10-minute plus mix of Wasp, Behind the Wall of Sleep, Basically an NIB remains one of the band's most powerful and propulsive cuts in the group's recording history. Black Sabbath eventually reached the top 10 on British charts, where it remained for 3 months and earned the band a devoted cult following on both sides of the Atlantic. That's pretty much it. So, obviously this had a fairly big impact, you know, more or less right when it came out, right? And in the years since, in the 50 years since, it's had... I don't think we can really say just how much this influenced rock music, right? And an incredible influence. I mean, not just this album, but all of Sabbath's early work, right? Just giant influence, giant. Again, I've said this before, and I'll say it again. If it was not for this band, heavy metal would not exist as it does, period. I mean, they invented the genres. They invented the genre, and they wrote the rules. I mean, along with Priest. Them and Priest, I think, defined the genre the most. Period. That's just my personal opinion. At least, you know, feel free to disagree, but I think those two bands really are who we have to thank for pretty much every modern form of heavy metal that exists. And just the influence it had on the entire music world cannot be overstated. We all owe a giant debt to the boys from Birmingham and that initial album. And of course, everything they would do in the 70s. So, that's pretty much it. You know, oh, I guess before I go, I will tell you the story of how I got into Black Sabbath. You know, Black Sabbath, I discovered them really fairly shortly after I got into metal in general. Maybe 2 or 3 years after I started listening to metal in general, I wanted to start to listen to, quote, older metal, right? So, you know, my dad actually had, he actually owned this album, I think, on vinyl. So I gave it a listen. I really liked it. And, you know, I decided to get a copy for myself on CD. And I got a bunch of their, I got most of their 70s albums on CD. So, yeah, that's basically how I got into Black Sabbath. And, of course, I instantly liked them, right? There was no, oh, gee, it's going to take me a while to get into it. No, it was like, as soon as I heard it, I knew it was just incredible work. And I can't really say enough good thing about their 70s material. So, if you're a metal fan, and for some reason you're not familiar with the 70s era Ozzy stuff, although if you're watching this, I'm assuming you are, especially... I know all of my normal viewers are, but if anybody who's not one of my normal viewers is somehow a metalhead and somehow... Okay, I guess the likelihood of this is probably about the same as me winning the lottery. But if you've been living under the rock for the past 50 years, have never heard of this stuff, give it a listen. You'll definitely see where pretty much all metal sprouted from. So, that's it. You know... If you made it all the way through this video, thank you so much. That's it. As always, live long and prosper.